Throughout the last 6.5 years of her life, Cindy James filed almost 100 complaints with the local police, ranging from property damage claims and threatening notes to home invasion reports, burglaries, arson, and assaults. Despite the extensive list of grievances, law enforcement authorities remained unable to ascertain the identity of the perpetrator behind these crimes. For nearly 8 years, Cindy endured the torment of an unrelenting stalker, turning her life into a nightmarish ordeal. Yet, despite the concerted efforts of the police to identify or even confirm the existence of the assailant, they encountered continuous setbacks. If indeed there was an intruder, their ability to elude capture was remarkable. In June 1989, a tragic resolution unfolded, sending shockwaves through the serene suburb of Vancouver. The lifeless body of a woman was discovered in the backyard of an abandoned house. Swiftly identified as 45-year-old Cindy James, the question loomed: who was responsible for her demise? Friends and family vehemently asserted that Cindy was incapable of taking her own life. However, after a thorough examination of the available evidence, the police reluctantly concluded that she had orchestrated a cunning suicide. A nurse and a doctor. Cindy James, born on June 12, 1944, was one of 6 children in the family of an Air Force colonel and a housewife. Following her high school graduation, she chose to pursue a career in nursing. Within half a year, the 19-year-old caught the affection of Roy Makepeace, a 37-year-old psychology teacher, despite his marital status. Despite the complications of an extramarital relationship, the captivating blonde with model-like looks reciprocated his feelings. For several years, they discreetly concealed their connection, but as Cindy completed her studies, she moved in with Roy, who had divorced his wife by then and was living alone. Despite a substantial 20-year age gap, they found compatibility. Regarded by those around them as an ideal couple, they shared a benevolent nature, a passion for medicine, and a commitment to helping others. Consequently, in 1966, merely 5 months after Cindy graduated from high school, the couple decided to formalize their union. Following their wedding, Cindy secured a position at a center for children with behavioral and emotional issues, while her husband assumed the role of Dean of the Faculty of Psychiatry at the University of British Columbia in 1969. Their lives appeared to be idyllic and harmonious. A change in life. Unexpectedly, in the spring of 1981, after a 12-year marriage, the couple decided to part ways. While they had no children together, it's worth noting that they maintained an amicable relationship post-divorce, spending a significant amount of time together over the next 5 years. They attended theaters, played bridge, and even embarked on joint vacations in 1982 and 1983. Returning to 1981, on a late December evening in Cindy's current residence, the phone rang. Upon answering, she encountered an indistinct noise resembling an untuned radio and promptly hung up. The following day, the mysterious calls persisted. As time passed, these calls escalated to an almost hourly frequency. Within a month or two, Cindy began hearing an ominous whisper on the other end, reminiscent of dialogue from a movie. Troubled by these incidents, Cindy reported the matter to the police, only to have her concerns dismissed. The situation took an unexpected turn as, one night in 1982, she discerned footsteps on her porch, followed by the deliberate destruction of light bulbs. The intruder went further by severing the telephone wire, rendering Cindy unable to contact the police. However, that marked merely the inception of the harrowing ordeal. Cindy found herself targeted with menacing letters, and on one night, a lifeless cat was callously placed beneath her door. It was horrifying. I discovered threatening notes at Cindy's doorstep on multiple occasions. Someone had meticulously cut letters and disturbing images from newspapers. He made death threats. After the incident with her cat, this psychopath left a chilling note. "You'll be next," recounted Agnes, Cindy's closest friend. Cindy was terrified. She sank into depression and withdrew, refusing to discuss the incidents even as the situation worsened. Initially, the police attempted to analyze the barrage of messages. They wiretapped the phone, conducted surveillance on the house, and sought fingerprints, yet the elusive perpetrator left no discernible traces. Subsequently, law enforcement authorities appeared to entertain the notion that Cindy was fabricating the events, leading them to all but disregard her complaints. Was she being stalked by her ex-husband? However, Cindy persisted in reaching out to the police, repeatedly expressing her fear for her life. She recounted incidents of broken windows, a damaged fence, and petty thefts from her property. On one occasion, she claimed that an intruder had stealthily entered her home while she slept, cutting a blanket before hastily escaping through a window. Cindy's frequent interactions with law enforcement led her to develop a close bond with Officer Pat McBride. By mid-1982, a romantic relationship blossomed between them. As the ominous notes left at her doorstep intensified, Pat temporarily moved in with Cindy, aiming to safeguard her from potential attacks and keep a watchful eye on her residence. In June 1982, Officer McBride informed his colleagues that he had encountered Cindy's ex-husband, Roy Makepeace, in a blind alley between their houses. Makepeace was reportedly armed with 2 guns. When questioned by McBride, Roy asserted that he was patrolling the area for his ex-wife's safety, a claim seemingly plausible given Cindy's ongoing concerns about the stalker. Roy Makepeace underwent repeated questioning by the police, consistently denying any involvement in the peculiar stalking. It became apparent that he couldn't have directly engaged in stalking, given his substantial time commitments at the university and on business trips. Although the possibility of hiring someone was considered, no evidence supporting this theory was uncovered. Around 1983, Roy began expressing to mutual friends his concerns about Cindy's deteriorating mental state. According to him, she had developed a dissociative disorder and urgently needed treatment. Strikingly, no one else who knew Cindy shared this belief, and it appeared to many that Roy was intentionally tarnishing the nurse's reputation. In 1984, Roy informed the police that Cindy had physically attacked him, recording these alleged beatings at the hospital. Following this, he severed communication with his ex-spouse, publicly stating that he was afraid of this crazy woman. Cindy, despite her initial disbelief, eventually confided to a friend that she did not rule out the possibility of her ex-husband being the stalker, acknowledging that Roy had his own skeletons in the closet. First attack. One evening, Cindy's closest friend, Agnes, paid an unannounced visit to find no response to her knock. Assuming Cindy might be in the bath, Agnes, who had a duplicate key, decided to enter and check on her friend's well-being. To her surprise, Agnes did not discover Cindy inside the house. Instead, her attention was drawn to the open garage door. There, she found Cindy in a distressing state, half-conscious, leaning against the wall and moaning, with a nylon stocking wrapped around her neck. Upon bringing her friend to her senses, Cindy recounted that she had intended to retrieve a box from the garage when an assailant approached from behind, attempting to strangle her. The only detail she managed to observe during the assault was the presence of white sneakers. The unexpected visit of her friend likely thwarted a more tragic outcome. as it seemed to scare the assailant away. Strangely, Agnes did not hear the attacker's departure, although there was a possibility that they fled while she was inspecting the house. Following this chilling incident, Cindy grew increasingly concerned and enlisted the services of a private investigator, Ozzy Cabana, a former policeman. With his assistance, Cindy took measures to change her last name from Makepeace to James, her car, and her residence. Meanwhile, the police continued their sluggish investigation and questioned Cindy on multiple occasions, displaying minimal enthusiasm. Around this juncture, numerous police officers began to harbor suspicions about the authenticity of Cindy's story. Detectives sensed that she was withholding information and being evasive, a stark contrast to her previous openness a year earlier. It would later be revealed by her mother that one of the stalker's notes had warned Cindy to talk less to the police or else loved ones would get hurt, compelling her to prioritize the protection of her family. The second incident. Regrettably, the relentless stalker managed to discover Cindy's new residence within a couple of weeks and persisted in sending her threatening notes. In an effort to provide her with a sense of security, Ozzy Cabana, the private investigator, equipped Cindy with a panic button, a walkie-talkie that could transmit a distress signal to his receiver. In the early hours of January 30, 1984, Ozzy heard peculiar noises emanating from his receiver and promptly raced to Cindy's house. Upon arrival, he discovered Cindy unconscious on the floor, a black stocking retightened around her neck, with a bloodied note clutched in her hand that ominously read, "Now you must die with." She mentioned seeing a flickering shadow in one of the rooms and went to investigate. The next thing she recalled was being struck on the head with a wooden bat or a similar object. Ozzy recounted to the police. Cindy was swiftly transported to the hospital, where tests revealed a substantial amount of a drug in her bloodstream, presumably injected by the assailant. The identity of the attacker remained elusive, and the police found no signs of forced entry into the house. Although her ex-husband was questioned later, he was in a different country at the time of the assault. The events of the following years. Upon Cindy's release from the hospital, the police took extensive measures to ensure her safety. A police car maintained constant vigilance near her residence day and night. For a while, things remained relatively quiet, except for intermittent silent phone calls. Despite the prevailing surveillance technology limitations of the time, which hindered source identification, the calls seemed to originate from an out-of-town location. However, when police withdrew their surveillance from the house, another disturbing incident transpired. On December 11, 1985, Cindy awoke in a ditch 10 kilometers from her home, clad in home clothes, a man's boot, and a work glove. She was chilled to the bone, her body marked with numerous small wounds and bruises. A familiar black stocking was tightened around her neck, and a red dot adorned her arm. Strikingly, this time Cindy had no recollection of the events. In response, Agnes and her husband Tom opted to move in with Cindy to provide constant vigilance. One night, Tom was stirred awake by an alarming noise and the scent of burning. Investigating, he discovered a fire in the basement. Promptly extinguishing the flames, Tom, in need of fresh air, stepped outside. There, he encountered a man standing near Cindy's house, holding an object resembling a bottle. Despite calling out, the man swiftly fled. Interestingly, during the subsequent police inspection, suspicions arose that Cindy might have been responsible for the arson. This assumption was based on the perceived locked state of the house during the fire and the absence of fingerprints or other marks on the windows that might suggest an intruder. after a psychiatric hospitalization. Suspecting Cindy to be in a suicidal state, authorities decided to place her in a psychiatric hospital where she remained for 9 weeks. Despite an extensive examination of her mental health, the medical professionals found no abnormalities. Upon her discharge and return home, Cindy discovered a new message on her phone's answering machine. A gravelly voice intoned, "Cindy, dead meat soon." A few days later, on October 26, 1988, another harrowing incident unfolded. Cindy James was discovered in her car parked in the driveway of her home, unconscious, dressed only in a shirt, with a black stocking tightly bound around her neck. Notably, her hands and feet were secured, and her mouth was covered with duct tape. Recounting the ordeal from her hospital bed, Cindy explained that the attack occurred when she entered her car, the assailant having concealed themselves in the back seat. A gruesome denouement. By the spring of 1989, Cindy's spirits had lifted, and she appeared to be genuinely happy. It had been 6 months since she last endured an attack, threatening calls, or menacing notes. For the first time in a prolonged period, she felt a sense of safety. Unfortunately, this reprieve marked the calm before the storm. On May 25, 1989, exactly 6 years and 7 months after the initial threatening phone call, 45-year-old Cindy James abruptly vanished. The search for her commenced the following morning. Investigations revealed that on the day of her disappearance, Cindy received her paycheck and then visited a hairdresser, leaving with a beautifully styled haircut. Subsequently, she stopped by a store, purchasing groceries and a birthday present for a friend's son. Beyond this point, her trail went cold. Her car was later discovered in a city parking lot 5 kilometers from Cindy's residence. On the back seat were a wrapped gift and recently acquired groceries, with a wallet found on the floor. Forensic analysis identified traces of blood on her car door, a foreboding sign. 2 weeks later, on June 8, 1989, Cindy's lifeless body was found in the yard of an abandoned house. She wore a sack over her head, and the familiar black stocking tightened around her neck. Additionally, her hands and feet were bound, the former behind her back, and her entire body exhibited signs of extensive bruising. Despite the apparent indications of a brutal murder, the medical examiner's report concluded that Cindy had succumbed to a drug and sedative overdose. Consequently, the police, relying on this assessment, presumed the tragic event to be a suicide and refrained from pursuing an investigation into the possibility of homicide. Theories. 2 primary theories surround the mysterious case of Cindy James' suicide or murder. Advocates for the suicide theory point to her profession as a nurse, suggesting potential access to narcotics, even though she was never formally charged with theft. The enigma lies in the complete absence of evidence pointing to an intruder during the extended period of persecution, a puzzling aspect of the case. The contentious aspect for those investigating Cindy's death centers on her bound hands. While enthusiast experiments demonstrate that tying oneself from behind is challenging but conceivable with ample practice, the circumstances raise questions. Another theory speculates that Cindy may have grappled with a rare mental disorder like multiple personality, a diagnosis notoriously challenging to detect. This raises the possibility of an alternate personality taking control and committing suicide. The idea that Cindy sought attention was dismissed due to the lack of apparent benefit. Deliberate self-inflicted harm seemed unlikely given her circumstances. On the murder front, plausible elements emerge. Those who knew Cindy intimately, including colleagues, friends, and relatives, had never observed any inclination towards ending her own life. Medical examinations revealed her to be physically healthy with no mental abnormalities. Furthermore, despite the stalker's elusiveness, there were instances when the perpetrator was glimpsed, notably after the 1985 arson, and possibly twice when Pat encountered Roy surveilling his ex-wife's home. The prime suspect in a potential murder scenario is Roy Makepeace, who initiated rumors about Cindy's mental health issues, which were later debunked. However, the inconsistency arises from Roy's frequent travels, making it seemingly impossible for him to personally carry out the extensive stalking. The question of whether he hired someone remains, albeit with inherent risks. While the Cindy James case is technically closed, it lingers as an unsolved enigma. As we delve into this perplexing saga, dear readers, I invite your perspectives on who and, more importantly, why someone stalked the nurse for nearly 8 years before tragically taking her life. I hope you liked this story. Please don't forget to leave a comment sharing with your thoughts below. Give a thumbs up this video and remember to hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more captivating stories. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey, and we'll see you in the next video.